Hello, and in America, everyone's a gynecologist. Welcome to Best of the Rest, the show where we take a second look at movies that were poorly received upon release and challenge ourselves to only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. It's Famous Flops Month, and this week we are talking the 1995 film Showgirls. My name is Chris Logan, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host from different places, Andrew Williams. Are you ready to talk some Showgirls, Andrew?
Yes.
All right. Andrew, what's your history with this movie? Is it something you've seen before? Did you rent it from the video store in the 90s as a young child? Is it formative in your life? Have you watched it beginning to end before this week?
No, shockingly. This is not the kind of movie my parents were letting me rent at the Blockbuster / Hollywood Video.
Well, that's good. You have good parents, Andrew.
Yes, for my father who is listening, you were excellent. But no, they let me get Dogma instead. But it's so not something that I inadvertently saw on TV as a youth. Not something that I really went back to later. I don't know that I've actually seen this movie start to finish before today. And I don't know if there's scenes that I remember. So I've clearly watched parts of it before. There were things that were in my brain. So clearly I had looked them up, like the pool scene or whatever. And
oh, you looked up the pool scene, Andrew?
Well, yeah, you gotta, you gotta.
Kyle MacLachlan's sex scene.
See Kyle MacLachlan's pubes? Hell yeah. But I definitely there were sequences that definitely were in my head. So I'm guessing through the years, whether it was seeing pieces of it here and there or whatever, it was clearly pieces of it in my head. But there were definitely parts rewatching it that I'd either not seen or just forgotten about. So not a movie that was a huge part of my youth for some reason. Can't imagine why not. But and that's not sarcasm, folks. I do not know how I didn't love this movie as a young adult. But anyway, never really gone back to it. I'm sure the legacy / reputation played a piece of that. But otherwise, not something that I've spent a lot of time with. What about you, Chris?
All right. So before we go any further, I just want to say this up front. I am not going to censor this episode. Normally on Best of the Rest, we try to watch our language. We'll bleep out curse words and stuff. Well, I want, if you're listening with a child in the car, I want you to be able to enjoy our show. But this is an NC-17 movie. There's stuff that we can't get around talking about, so we're just going to have to talk about it. So I would recommend not listening to this particular episode around children, or if you're sensitive to explicit things. I mean, we might talk about Kyle MacLachlan's pubes and more on this podcast. So this is your official
Folks,
warning.
Get ready. It's going to
happen. Here's my history of this movie. I was aware of it for most of my life. I remember the poster, the cover, the S shape of Elizabeth Berkley. That one, and we were talking about Striptease before we hit record here, which is another movie from the 90s about strippers with Demi Moore. I also had never seen that movie, but I remember the cover as well. They're just, it's a young boy in a video rental store. You notice these strangely erotic covers, but never got around to watching this movie. I knew of its reputation. However, in 2017, I meet my now wife, now friend of the show, and soon find out that this movie is her favorite film. Hands down, her favorite movie is Showgirls. So we watched it together at some point, and I think, wow, this is your favorite movie. But now's probably a good time to talk about the cult status of this film, because while it was disappointing at the box office, while it was shredded by critics, it has eventually found a second life as a cult film and camp classic. a la like what's that movie Valley of the Dolls that
Yeah.
from the 60s, something like that, something where it's I mean The Room is a more extreme example, but we're sort of enjoying the movie on a different wavelength than it was initially made. So, friend of the show, my wife, she enjoys the camp nature. She also, maybe we'll get her on the podcast sometime to say her side of the story, but I know, unlike you and I, Andrew, she did see this movie at a young age. I think it is a little formative for her her life, and it's just something that she's always gone back to and had a lot of fun with. I so this is something she brought into this relationship. I'm holding up a Showgirls box set. This is the DVD. And inside of this box set, there's a huge fold-out poster of a naked Elizabeth Berkley. It's got tassels that you can pin to her nipples. It's like pin the tail on the donkey, but it's pin the tassels on the naked Elizabeth Berkley. It's got a couple shot glasses. It's got a lot of drinking games, and there's like instructions for different drinking games, like drink every time someone says "darling." Clearly, this box set is the VIP edition, they call it. At some point, MGM began embracing the new cult status of this film, and because of home video, this movie did eventually become profitable, and it has like special screenings, and some of the cast has kind of come around to its new status. I also have here, and I'll post pictures of all this physical media in our Discord, but the 4K release that was released by Vinegar Syndrome last year, and it is very nice packaging. I mean, they really went all out for this thing to release it in 4K, which is how I watched it this week. I watched Showgirls in glorious 4K. So I've seen the movie a couple times now, that is to say, and I have a lot of fun with it. I enjoy it. I'm gonna, we're a hashtag positivity podcast. Our goal is to revisit these movies, but only talk about the things we think genuinely work. And I'm be honest, it's a little tough for me with this one because I do enjoy this movie, but I mostly enjoy it on that camp wavelength. And, I mentioned The Room earlier. Andrew, I don't think we'll ever cover The Room on this podcast because while I do love that movie and seen it a ton, I know I'm not enjoying it for the reasons that the creators intended. So while I might say I like this scene or this scene or this scene, it almost sounds backhanded to the creators because I'm not enjoying it the same way. And that's not really what our podcast is about. We want to look at the genuine efforts they put forward and recognize it. So that's tough here because I go back and forth with this movie on what Paul Verhoeven was aware of, what he intended, what these actors were going for, and how I'm enjoying it. And I don't know, it's all this movie's kind of a mess, but a beautiful mess that I very much enjoy.
A beautiful naked mess, yes.
Very naked.
Very naked.
I'm pretty sure there's more nipples in this movie than people.
Yeah, given that, there's 2 nipples on every person. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Anyway, it is wild to me that like home video is actually like, this is one of the few instances where like home video can genuinely point to making the film a success. Like I believe they said that it, over $100 million from home video rentals alone, just for this. That's not talking even like sales or people buying the movie. That's just rentals. And so that movie, this movie that didn't even make back its budget is now at triple its budget simply because of home video rental. It really is something that there was a time where rental sales could be the difference. And there was an interview I read with, or was an interview. It was like an interview I was watching. I think it was with Matt Damon, and he talked about how that used to be this entire like second revenue stream or this like tertiary revenue stream where like you had your box office, which was like the first piece, and then you had the physical media sales and the rentals. And he's like, both of those were kind of these like, oh, well, if you didn't make the money back there, you'll probably get it here. And nowadays, we were talking about this a little bit last week with Tomorrowland. I think it was last week with Tomorrowland, but just like the shift in the digesting of film, just now that's gone. that's just not there anymore. That
It's like
whole
the death of the $30 million picture. We've lamented plenty of times in this podcast. Like, make a small $30 million picture, even if it makes 40 million at the box office, even if it's barely covering production. You know you're going to go in the black on home video and eventually become profitable, and you got a success.
now it feels like everything's either micro budgeted at 2-3 million, or it's 100 million plus, and it's like you're setting the bar, like, especially for some of the stuff that gets these massive budgets. Like, I was actually surprised. I just saw Kung Fu Panda 4 the other day. Adorable. But apparently that budget was only like 70 or 80 million. And so I was kind of surprised because the other ones had gone well over 100. And so it's pulling that budget back with the idea of trying to actually make it a little bit easier to make some profit. And that's kind of a reverse trend right now. Although I feel like it's moving back towards that because we've had so many $200 million bombs lately where these studios have dropped these huge movies with huge budgets and then the people just aren't showing up for them. But that home video rentals alone used to be this entire different revenue stream. And it is something that you just don't have now. And I think that adds to the barrier of why things have, why there's so much pressure on box office now, because there's really nothing coming after the box office at this point. So, but yeah,
I'm,
it's wild
I'm not
to see
surprised that there was people in 1995 that were unwilling to go and sit in a public theater and watch this film, but they were totally fine with renting it and watching it in the privacy of their own home. That does not surprise me.
It doesn't surprise me at all either. I think the movie itself is, it definitely is like The Room before The Room in a lot of ways, where like you've got this kind of ironic, people would watch it to kind of have fun with it and make fun of it. Kind of, they were talking about how that was a thing they would do. And, this is, when, I don't remember when The Room was released, but probably almost 10 years before that. So it's interesting to see a film, especially of this nature, gain such an intense cult following. But I think I wouldn't be shocked if that was part of it, where people are like, I can't be seen in a theater watching Showgirls. I have to watch it at home, like like a normal creep. But
it's this camp appreciation, because it's like I stopped just short of saying making fun of the movie. It kind of is, but at the same time, it's like one time I saw The Room, I saw a screening downtown, and Tommy Wiseau was there, and the dude's like a rock star. Like, I got to go meet him and throw a football with him, and he was doing autographs, and like, we love this guy. I would go to conventions to see these people. And same thing with Showgirls. Like, if we'll talk about it more later, but like, eventually Elizabeth Berkley does kind of come around to the status of this movie, and she has showed up at screenings and stuff. But like, that's why I stopped short of saying making fun of the movie, because I also love them for making this movie. Like, I don't think they did a bad job. I think it just comes out maybe a little bit differently than they intended. But like, I mean no ill will when I am entertained by this film. And you talk about the creators, the writers, the director, they all kind of have different stories as far as how much was intended and how much is not. And that's true of The Room as well. And it's true of just about every movie that kind of reaches this status. But yeah, Andrew, let's jump into it. Let's set the stage here. The movie is released September 22nd of 1995. It's made on a budget of $45 million, which is a huge budget for an NC-17 movie. It's not a huge budget for a Hollywood film, but considering how limited you are making the movie-going audience by that rating, it's crazy they made this for $45 million. At the box office, it only brings in $37.8 million, doesn't even reach its production budget, and it is torn apart by the critics. Even today, with some reevaluation, the Rotten Tomatoes critic score is still only at 23%. People were not kind to this film upon release. To anybody, the actors, the director, the writer, like it's up and down, absolutely panned upon release.
It does not do well. For comparison, another film that came out in I think the budget, like Jumanji, comes out in 1995 and costs $65 million. So, we're looking at a step up from Showgirls, but like, those are the types of movies that were being made for that kind of money. Like Jumanji is a pretty effects ridden, effect heavy type film, and the budget's not that much higher than it is for Showgirls.
I mean, Batman
So
89, 6 years earlier, has the exact same budget, $45 million.
Yeah.
The
Batman
same amount
Forever,
of movie they spent on Batman, they spent on Showgirls.
Batman Forever, which does come out this same year, is $100 million by comparison. And that movie is also massive and huge. The only point being that like $45 million on an NC-17 movie about a Vegas nudie show is kind of insane. Like, it's genuinely kind of like the fact that they got that budget and they went through it. Like, it's almost hurt. Like, Paul Verhoeven deserves to go into like any Hall of Fame for that alone, for like
just getting it made.
Do that. Like the fact that they got it made at that high of a budget is pretty insane. And yeah, but the box office itself is just to say it's not there is a little bit of an understatement.
This movie is written by Joe Esterhaas. Now, Joe has some impressive credits in his filmography. Before this, I'd already worked with Paul Verhoeven because he wrote Basic Instinct. But his thing is that he's just extremely well paid and is often getting paid millions of dollars for his not even stories, for just pitches. Somewhat famously, his pitch for Showgirls was written on a cocktail napkin, and he gets $2 million or $3 million, I think, for that one, just for like the concept. And then they give him millions of dollars, say, yeah, go write a script. But up and down his filmography, you'll see story credit or writing credit and him getting paid millions of dollars for it. And what's so perplexing to me is that, at least I don't see in his filmography that huge breakaway hit. Like, oh, that's the guy that wrote this, so we'll pay him millions of dollars just for his idea. It's just like he just willed himself to that status and just continued to get paid millions of dollars for one-off ideas. Sometimes they were hit. Most of them are just mid-level dramas.
I don't mean to be rude here, but Flashdance made $200 million.
So do you think that's what it is, Flashdance?
Yes.
Do you think that's the reason he gets this status?
Yes. Because he does Flashdance, and then it's Big Shots where he gets $1.25 million. Basic Instinct, he gets $3 million. Showgirls, he got $2 million. And that's when shit goes shit. Sorry.
It's like, hey, uncensored. You can say whatever the hell you want, Andrew.
So then Showgirls, he gets $2 million, and then even the next two, like Jade is the kind of notorious. He got paid $1.5 million for a 2-page outline, and then got an additional $400,000 to executive produce. They paid him to executive produce the movie, and then One Night Stand, he gets $4 million total for everything. But then they changed his script so much his name's not on the final film. Like. But Flashdance is, to me, clearly where it starts. He co-writes that movie with Tom Hedley, but it's a $200 million box office off a $7 million budget. Like, that movie crushed. And so I'll
be honest, Andrew, I didn't realize how big of a deal Flashdance was. I'll be honest. To me, it's just like not obscure, but an 80s hit, teen hit, kind of came and went. But
I'm not saying that the level that he's getting paid at matches that of Flashdance, but clearly Flashdance is like, oh, this guy can write us a movie that can make a lot of money. And then Basic Instinct was probably an affirmation of that, because that was another one that cost, I think, $50 million and made like 350. So, I mean, there are hits in there that definitely give you a notion that, oh, this guy can write a movie that's going to make us some money. To the level, like I said, to the level he kept getting paid at. I don't know, but
it's like
for a while there,
the writing team that did Iron Man, and they kept getting these massive chances and never really worked out. It's like, maybe there's other ingredients that went into that movie that made it a big hit.
It's always interesting to see, because there are writers who very much, when they say the writer of X is going to work on Y, I'm just like, oh man, that's exciting. And then there are definitely people where they're like, the writers of X are going to work on Y, and it was kind of like, okay. Yeah, sure. If for a while there, Christopher McQuarrie was going to write something, I was like, there we go. Like, I'm into that. I know that's probably going to be pretty solid. But that said, the Iron Man guys got their names attached to a lot of stuff early on, where people were like, oh, the Iron Man guys, because Iron Man was a hit, but yet then everyone was kind of like, oh, but then you find out that like RDJ and Favreau were just kind of riffing like 80% of that movie on the spot. Yeah. And the Iron Man being the success that it is really is actually kind of Herculean when you think about it, because that movie really feels kind of inadvertently like flying by the seat of its pants a lot with the kind of amount of improv and stuff, especially given how many effects were going on there. But yeah, it's a little wild, but I mean, that dude doesn't have to worry about anything ever again, so good for him.
And then this movie is directed by the one and only Paul Verhoeven. Andrew, Paul Verhoeven feels like the kind of director where normally on this part of our podcast it would be like, look, we can't talk about this director, we're just gonna move on. But as far as I can tell, there's no controversies on this guy. There's no stories. There's no assault. But I feel like there should be. Hashtag VP. The types of movies that he makes and like interviews, and I'm like, God, this guy, I feel like something's going on here. But he's well respected, and I haven't heard a single. If the story's out there, let me know. I haven't seen a single thing that would like, get this guy canceled or anything. He seems like a stand-up guy, and just sometimes makes some very sleazy, trashy, and very erotic films, and good for you, dude. I mean, living the life. But look at this run is just, we talk about runs a lot on this podcast, directors that just have this string of high profile films or well received films. This guy, RoboCop, follows it up with Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Showgirls, which we're talking about today, and then Starship Troopers. Dude, that is like, if that was a box set, I'd buy that day one. It's so crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And there's so much variety in there, but also just, they are all very Paul Verhoeven, which is died up to 11. I don't know. Would you say he's not a subtle director, but also, I really don't. I don't know how exactly I'm trying to describe this, because like RoboCop, I feel like there's plenty of people that kind of miss the point of RoboCop, but I also don't feel like it's a subtle film. You know what I mean?
No, I don't know that subtle is the word I would use. In fact, it's probably the opposite of the word I would use. I think that's what actually kind of makes the fact that people miss the satire of like RoboCop and Starship Troopers all the more funnier to me, is that the message of those movies is about as subtle as getting kicked in the balls. Like they're painfully obvious sometimes, and yet people still like there was not really a controversy, but there's this game that came out recently called Helldivers 2, and it's prompted this guy that was like I guess the story of the game is kind of that maybe the Helldivers aren't the good guys. And so it prompted this kind of trend where this guy was just like, oh, Helldivers aren't the good guys. What are you going to tell me next? That the Marines and Starship Troopers are the bad guys? And everyone was like, but how did you just blow right past everything Starship Troopers is about to make like you picked the one thing that like definitely does not agree with you in regards to this argument and plowed right into it.
They had to have been self-aware, because like I haven't played Helldivers 2, but my buddy does, and he showed me like an intro video, because it is very Starship Troopers. Like they're clearly inspired and influenced by it. But like, I just can't imagine someone watching Starship Troopers and be like, yeah, colonization! Like it's awesome, but
it's about killing bugs. That's all it is, man, right? No, and even Total Recall, with kind of some of the stuff that it's working with, like Total Recall is a little bit more straightforward. Like you can enjoy Total Recall kind of on a pure surface level without really diving into any of the politics of it, even though they are there, even though people would like to think that it doesn't, because they would like to argue that all of Arnold's movies aren't political. He was just a good old action star. He never made movies that were political. You're lying. Yeah, Basic Instinct even, I haven't watched that one in a long time, but, he knows what he's looking for, and there is usually heavy satire in his films, which is kind of it's a little bit of a strange anomaly with Showgirls. We were talking about that a little before the show, because the question is like, okay, well, if this is also satire, what is it satire of exactly? Like with RoboCop, it's clearly law enforcement. With Starship Troopers, you can look at hyper-patriotism, you can look at colonization, you can look at any number of those things. And so there's usually an easy thing to point to. Showgirls is kind of the exception to that, where like there's not really a clear thing that we're satirizing here.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's a
No
weird one.
comments on the movie itself, but yeah.
Well, it's a movie that you watch, and it's very easy to be like, well, this is like, who directed this? It's so cheesy and corny and sleazy, but like, there's a craft to this movie. There's like some
Yep.
it's very well made trash.
No.
And I mean that hashtag PP. Like, I mean this all as a positive. It is wild. But yeah, just that run is just crazy. And his more recent movies, I should really seek him out. He's making like French films now, I think. Like, they haven't really had wide releases in the US, but I still hear great things about the movies he continues to make, even though he's 85 years old now. But I think his newest release just a few years ago.
Yeah.
About a lesbian nun in the 17th century. So, I'm sure it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul Verhoeven. God bless you. Yeah, this is the weird one, but we're gonna try to unpack it, talk about the positives, everything we like about Showgirls. All right, Andrew, you ready?
Yeah.
Nomi Malone is a young woman with big dreams of becoming a famous dancer. After hitching a ride in Las Vegas, she begins working at a strip club to make some money, but is soon infatuated with the glamorous Showgirls of the Stardust Casino. After getting an audition to join, she soon finds herself on the Stardust stage and under the watchful eye of the show's star, Crystal Connors. Nomi is soon caught up in the lifestyle of Las Vegas and everything that comes along with it, and resorts to pushing Crystal down the stairs so Nomi can take her spot. But when her reckless actions lead to her best friend Molly getting viciously attacked, Nomi realizes how far she has fallen and tries to make things right. Andrew, normally this is the part where we make some kind of joke about, oh, it's a classic tale, but there is a classic story being told here of two female performers competing to be in the spotlight of a show. It's as
Are you telling me that Black Swan is just a Showgirls remake?
I was gonna say it's as old as All About Eve. It's as new as Black Swan.
Yeah.
Yes, I think any movie in this line of films are influenced by the others. Like, it is just this base concept for a film that I think is fun and exciting, but that's not all this movie is doing. There's this whole subplot with a character that is also aspiring to be a dancer and is trying to recruit Nomi, but also seems like he might just be a front to be using her. There is other performers, other dancers in the cast that are backstabbing one another. There's a whole cast of the strip club. There's a lot of layers here, a lot of things happening. But at the core
Chris,
of it, I think
these people are wearing no layers. So
at the core of it, I think the rivalry between Crystal and Nomi is what drives it. It's my favorite aspect of the film. But heck of a thing, Andrew. Heck of a thing. We're gonna be talking all about it. All of our favorite scenes, our favorite dance numbers. But first, we're gonna start with the cast of the film. And we're going to start with the high point, the best casting, best performance in the movie, because every episode, we recognize one person who goes so far above and beyond the call of duty that they actually elevate the quality of the entire film with their performance. We recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. So, Andrew, I think I know where you're going, but let me go ahead and ask, who is getting your Mark Strong Award for Showgirls?
Well, Chris, you may know me too well. You see that? Know me too well. But I gotta go with I don't know that I'd call him the villain of the piece. Maybe a little bit. He's definitely an antagonist at times, an ally at others. Seemingly has some less than noble intentions, and then kind of feels like he's coming around, and then kind of turns back at the end. So he's a bit of a big show in this movie, where the heel and face turns are just coming too fast for me to really track. But I got to go Kyle MacLachlan as what is Zach Casey? I think his character's name is Carey. Zach Carey. He is what is he? The entertainment director at the Stardust Hotel in Las Vegas, which is a real hotel in Las Vegas.
And the Cheetah is a real strip club. I thought both of those things are pretty bizarre that they're in this movie.
Yeah. At the Stardust I kind of get. The topless bar, that was a little bit more direct. But anyway, I've spoken about Kyle MacLachlan before. He is an alum of the show from the Flintstones.
You've given him a Mark Strong Award before. I'm almost positive he got your Mark Strong Award for the Flintstones. So I think you're making him a 2-time Mark Strong Award winner right now.
Single-handedly. But yeah, has he been on the show for anything else? No, I think that was it.
You just find a way to talk about him every other episode, even if
I do, because we talk about David Lynch or whatever, and just saw Dune 2 the other day, which, Kyle MacLachlan was in the David Lynch Dune, which is a heck of a thing too. But no, obviously Kyle MacLachlan is great. I will be honest, he is not one of the cast members who has come around to this in the ensuing years. He's still kind of he's spoken about like why he signed up for it, but he was like, it was the writer and director of Basic Instinct. Like, why wouldn't you think this was going to be kind of like a dark, edgy kind of take on this subject matter? And it just wasn't. He talked about, he had a great time shooting it. He mentioned that like he would go off skiing on his days off, which he wasn't supposed to because he could get hurt. So he was like, I was just hanging out in Vegas shooting this movie, and then at night I'd go up or days off, I'd go up into the mountains and go skiing. So he's kind of had he talked very heavily about having a great experience filming it, but just wasn't super enamored with the final product, which is unfortunate because I think he is playing his part really well of just this kind of needlessly manipulative entertainment director who like tells Nomi what she wants to hear, but then turns around and like knows exactly what the score is. Like, at one point Nomi gets sent to a boat show where she's essentially being pimped out, and Zach pretends to be all aghast that somebody would dare ask this of her, but then, and kind of like scolds the employee in the moment, and then calls him back like immediately afterwards and is like, come on, get back here. Come on. I know what's going on. Like, it's all an act. He's completely in it for himself, just trying to get what he wants for himself. And Kyle MacLachlan's pretty good at that, as evidenced by something like the Flintstones, which is arguably, pun intended, a far more cartoonish version of this character. But he is leaning into that. And he even kind of said that was like an intentional thing that he was doing at this time to kind of try and lean away from the kind of wide-eyed, heroes that he kind of play with stuff like Blue Velvet or Twin Peaks. He was kind of looking for some characters with a little bit more depth, a little bit more
seedy,
villainous. Yeah, just playing more into that, playing the Dennis Hopper role in Blue Velvet instead of the Kyle MacLachlan role. But it's still great. I like him a lot here. I think he's doing a good job with it. I think he's digging into it just like he needs to. And, I'm into that. So Kyle MacLachlan, always the man.
Great pick, Andrew. Not my Mark Strong Award winner, but I do want to throw a micro Mark Strong Award to that hair, which is so 90s. It's essentially a bowl cut that he is just trying to make it. It's not a bowl cut. Let me push it to one side, but it is. Yeah. It is a wild.
I guess his hair gets wet at one point and it just goes flat, and you're just like, it's a bowl cut. It's a bowl cut. Oh.
Yes. He's doing such a good job. He is so. I mean, I think he's a bad guy, but he certainly. I mean, the key scene for him is when the
pool.
Nice butt. I assume he does his own butt work. It is bonkers to me, insane that there's not a single penis in this film. I've talked about it before. Not enough dong on screen. We are so quick to throw naked women up there. Always hide the penis.
Especially since it's like NC-17. Like at that point, just go for it. Like just do it. Like. And he's like legitimately the only person they even come close to showing anything on as far as men go. Like
Yeah.
Nobody else even gets close. Like, you see this dude, you see his butt, and like I said, 10 out of 10. And then like you see him get into the pool like very quickly, and like that's the closest you get. Like,
It's like
from the
they're
front.
framing
Like,
stuff so carefully to not show him, but the women, they're bending over in front of the camera. I mean, they're going everywhere. So look, I appreciate all the nudity in this film. Don't get me wrong, but could have also been some naked men. Let's balance the scales a little bit. What was
props
I saying,
to
Andrew?
Kyle MacLachlan for trying to do his part.
Yeah, sure. The key scene is what I was saying. Is whenever one of the managers of the hotel sends Elizabeth Berkley's character to this boat show to just kind of represent the hotel, but then very heavily implies that for the money she's being paid, she needs to go home with this gentleman. And she rejects that, and she runs to Kyle MacLachlan and says, "This guy made me do it." And he chastises him. He calls him up to the stage and is like, "You need to apologize. We don't do that kind of thing," and makes her feel good. But as soon as she walks off, he calls the guy up and is like, "Dude, I didn't mean that. Get back over here."
Chris,
That's
I don't mean to be
scene.
rude, but I talked about that scene, right?
Did you?
Yes, I did.
It
was in my explanation of how he is as a character. With like, he's got.
Okay,
I
didn't need to explain it, break it down like I did then.
Anyway, it is the key scene.
That's the
because
key
that tells
scene
you
of
who
this
he
character.
is. That tells you who he is. Yeah.
Everything you need to know about him. And so yeah, even though there are moments where it seems like maybe he does like Nomi or to some degree, he clearly sees her as lesser than, as someone to be used. So that's he's a bad guy. Maybe not our main antagonist. I might go to someone else. But first, I got to give my Mark Strong award out. And my award is going to the one and only Elizabeth Berkley as Nomi Malone, our main character, and just the wild card at the center of this movie. First off, step back a little bit. Elizabeth Berkley is known to everyone for her role on Saved by the Bell.
Yes.
She plays Jessie, the female lead of that show. Wildly popular teen show that ran from the late 80s to early 90s.
Female lead on that show. There are several.
Debate that what you will. She is a lead character of a very popular teen show. And that's how America knows her.
Yes. I'm not debating that America knows her for Saved by the Bell, but she's not like, there's like Kelly Kapowski is like on that show as a main character. Like, there are several main characters.
Is
this
this really
and stupid? Yes.
A battle that you want to have? Is this worth fighting for? Do you want to die on this hill, Andrew?
I'm not willing to die on this hill, but you're the one that put me on this hill. So here we are. I'm willing to get slightly wounded on this hill. Not, I'm already over this. Let's move on.
She's known for her co-starring role on Saved by the Bell. Can I say that, Andrew? All right.
For her role on Saved by the Bell, in which she was part of the ensemble. No, that's terrible. Don't say that.
My point is, it's very clear that, like many young actors or maybe stars that are known for their work with Disney, they get older and they want to break out and be known as a quote-unquote serious actor capable of doing more adult work. And that is clearly what this taking on this role was meant to do. And it's just the most extreme version of that story. Because it's not just taking on like an R-rated role. It's not just playing a mature role. It's not just, having a topless scene on screen. It is dialed up to 11. I mean, NC-17, full nudity, totally shedding her innocent appearance that most of America knows her for. She really goes for it. And at the time of its release, maybe not most, but a lot of the criticism, a lot of the critical panning of this film was centered on her. I mean, her performance gets torn to shreds. I'm not saying critics should have liked her performance at the time. I get why they didn't, but I think the blame should go around to Paul Verhoeven and writers. If you don't like this movie, there's a lot of reasons for it, but she's kind of the face of the movie, and it does very clearly damages her careers in the roles she is able to get after this, or not able to get. She disappears for a very long time from the public eye. And as this film goes on to have this cult status, like, it becomes very clear that what she's bringing to this is what makes it work on this wild, campy, strange level. Like her performance. There's a scene where she is trying out to be the understudy for Crystal, and there's 3 girls on stage, and they're like, yeah, she's not technically the best, but she's got the most heat. You know, they're describing this je ne sais quoi, this X factor. And I feel like that's what Elizabeth Berkley is bringing to Showgirls. This weird performance, so melodramatic at times when she talks about her past or her mood flips on a dime, to where she's just being carefree and eating a cheeseburger, but then slamming her head against a car door because she's so distraught, or walking in the traffic. I mean, it is so extreme. But I can't stop watching her. Like, it's just, I study this performance to try to figure it out. Like, what is she going for? What layer is this? What camp is this? Is it taking it seriously? And I just, regardless of how you might land on what you think about it, you can't stop watching it. And for that reason, and I mean, this is a crazy role to take on. Just what's being asked of her. Just star of an NC-17 movie. So many reasons. I'm giving it to Elizabeth Berkley. She's at the center of this movie and what makes it special at the end of the day.
I think this is a good pick. I think this is a deserved pick. I think there are a lot of people who may scoff at this, but hey, you people are wrong. But I think the movie doesn't work without this, or it becomes something much different. And, you know, if you're a fan of this movie as it is in large part because of what Elizabeth Berkley is doing. So I think it is the right thing to give her the flowers on that one. So I agree. I think she's doing and Paul Verhoeven has even said kind of an afterwards, he's like, she's doing exactly what he asked her to do. Like, you know, this is the performance that he wanted out of her in this film. And he always thought it was kind of unfair that she ended up shouldering the burden for this because movies are not one person. So, yeah, in that regard, very well earned.
I would say, even if you don't like what she's doing, it's not bad acting. Like, I've seen bad acting in movies. I'm not going to name any names, but I've seen like, oh, they cast, let's say, you know, it's usually a female actor clearly being cast for the look that they want, and they pay no regards to finding someone who has the talent of acting. And it's been painfully obvious in other movies, just how lines are read, that they are not trained or skilled as an actor. And I do not get that from Elizabeth Berkley. I think she knows how to act very clearly, and she might be making decisions that don't make sense to you or I or audience goers, but that's not the same as not being able to act. So yeah, I'll defend her all day long for her role in this movie, her performance. And she is one that, like I said, this movie very clearly damaged her career. She has popped up in minor roles. She was part of the Saved by the Bell sort of reunion revival that they did. She's done some work on the stage. So still has a successful career.
But clearly, like, especially in the aftermath of this, like, she still showed up in movies after this, but clearly is like, it's much more supporting characters. This kind of seemed to dash any notion she had of being a leading actress kind of going forward.
Yeah,
and
she got dropped by her agent. Yeah, pretty rough stuff. And she's the one that eventually, she's still, I can't find much video or interviews of her really embracing or talking about this film, but she has appeared, like as I said previously, at like special screenings for Showgirls. She's shown up. She's done the famous hand motion. And so the impression that I get, and again, I haven't heard her speak about it, the impression I get is that she doesn't quite maybe get why the movie has a second life, but she's not mad about it. And she's willing to, you know, if they appreciate it for whatever reason, I'll put my stamp on it. But mostly she's pretty tight-lipped about her personal thoughts on the movie. I'm sure they're very complicated feelings, but
I would imagine.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, like, you think about putting yourself into something like this, not just in the sense of the actual role itself, but quite literally putting yourself on display in such a way, and to kind of have it be treated that way, that's got to be, you know, you talk about the professional ramifications, but just the personal ramifications, like just knowing that you took that big swing and people just didn't not care for it, but like it got panned. And, you know, I would think seeing that the film has a second life is a little bittersweet because, and this is all just This is all just guessing. I can't figure out how to say hypothesizing. So,
Hypothetical?
hypothesizing. But just the idea that, like, to take that swing, to have it kind of not land in the way that you hoped, and to have it get a second life has got to be rewarding in a way, but at the same time, it might just be a reminder that, you know, when it came out, there still was this intense backlash, and so it's like, you're happy it's got an audience now, but there's probably still some, like you said, complicated feelings there. But yeah, she's putting herself into this completely 100%, and yeah, it's unfortunate. And also that she seemingly was kind of the main one that mostly suffered from this. Like, you know, Paul Verhoeven went on to make Starship Troopers right after this. Kyle MacLachlan, obviously, like almost everybody else involved in this, didn't really have a whole lot of issues after this, but yet she's the one that does. And that is, again, a bigger statement probably on, you know, it's the same idea that, like, you know, people are like, oh, well, if Wonder Woman's not successful, they're not going to make any female superhero movies again. And it's like, well, you know, that's maybe not the right lesson to take if Wonder Woman's not successful. How many male movies didn't succeed? And nobody ever said, hey, we're done making dude movies. Like,
it's like the heat coming down on Janet Jackson, but not Justin Timberlake.
Exactly.
It's clear what's going on there.
Yeah. It's. I'm starting to sense a pattern, folks. I can't think of a single, like, witty thing to say in that moment that just doesn't seem to be downplaying the intense disparity in treatment of men versus women. So I'm not going to.
Now, here's another performance I really love. Gina Gershon as Crystal Connors. As the star, as the aspiration for Nomi, who, I mean, their relationship is so interesting because it's clear that Gina Gershon admires Nomi, admires her talent, sees her as a younger version of her, as a hungry version of her, and there is straight up sexual tension between the two of them.
Oh, but that's an understatement.
At the same time, though, she is so manipulative, so backstabbing, so willing to do whatever it takes to try to hold on to her spot. There's so many scenes where they're face to face and they're exchanging niceties. Sometimes they bond, but then what happens behind their back is just so treacherous, and it finally, you know, escalates to the point of her pushing her down the stairs. But I really like Gina Gershon here. I think, I mean, Elizabeth Berkley, for all the reasons we've said, really putting herself out there, but Gina Gershon is right there with her as far as, you know, whether it's being nude on screen or just really putting herself out there in this role, in this performance. But such good casting. I love the contrast between these two. You know, Nomi's blonde, Gina Gershon has dark hair. They fit so well as rivals in that classic, again, All About Eve way. It's just a classic story. It sounds like I'm being cheesy when I'm talking about Showgirls, but this rivalry between these two performers really is classic. I love when Nomi gets the spot as her understudy, but then Gina Gershon gets it taken away from her. And after Nomi finds out, she walks back into the dressing room, and Gina Gershon, or Crystal, is sitting on Nomi's like makeup chair, and she's talking to the other girls and telling a story. And it's just such a slap in the face to be, you know, sitting in her spot so casually when she knows what happened behind the scenes. It's just so deceitful and evil. And I think she's the ultimate villain for Nomi, at least, in this story. And
at least for the first 2/3 of the movie or so. She kind of disappears for the final third there. But.
Well, that push down the stairs really fits her on the back burner.
It's not the push. It's not the push anyone's looking for.
It's then their last scene, you know, they have a very intimate kiss in the hospital room before she leaves. Like, it's just.
I can tell you this right now. If I did watch this movie as a youth, that scene would have been very.
That's your favorite. I find their dynamic genuinely interesting. It's one of those things that you could look at this movie on the surface and see a bunch of trash and sleaze and just an excuse for these women to kiss. But, like, I think there's a genuinely interesting relationship story, push and pull happening there that is, for my money, the core of this movie. And I said I like this movie for its camp and everything, and that's true. But as far as like an actual story to hold on to and follow and be entranced by, it's the relationship between these two characters.
Yeah, I think their relationship is super interesting because like it's like there's this weird respect because like, you know, Crystal is the one that kind of scouts Nomi and like brings her into the fold and like kind of is like, it starts in a very antagonistic way. And so their entire relationship is built on this very like unsteady back and forth that sort of turns into a mutual respect, and I think maintains that respect to a degree, because like even at the last scene when Gina Gershon's like, how do you think I got my first starring role? Like she knows and doesn't question it. Like, so there's this weird mindset of like, was Gina Gershon just like trying to push her to get to the level that she knew she was capable of? Did she see herself in her? And like basically just, you know, there's this thought of like, was Crystal just pushing her the whole time, and was even like yanking out the understudy thing from under her still just part of that? And, you know, there's the manipulative piece of that. There's a whole lot of ways you can read that relationship, but it ends on a note that implies that at bare minimum, there is still at least some mutual respect between these characters, and maybe a lot of mutual other stuff too. But I like it a lot. It's good stuff.
Glenn Plummer plays James Smith, and he has his own story with Nomi that's almost completely separate from everything that's happening on the stage. He's someone that sees her first at the strip club and recognizes he sees her at a dance club actually, but sees a strip club and recognizes there's like raw talent there, because Nomi has aspirations to be a quote unquote legitimate dancer, not just an erotic dancer, but someone who's actually recognized for their talents. And he's someone that apparently sees that in her and tries to push her to be quote unquote a legitimate dancer, and he's willing to train her and teach her and how to be an actual dancer. He himself is just working odd jobs, but also has his own dreams of being a professional dancer. And there's sort of a romance brewing, but it never quite gets quote unquote official. And then we find out that he is saying all these same things to a different girl, another dancer from the strip club, and that's what drives a wedge between them. At the end, I guess it's just up to the audience to decide whether he was being genuine with Nomi, but lying to this other girl simply to sleep with her, or if that's just his game all the time. We don't know. They end on kind of ambiguous terms, or ambivalent terms, I should say. But it seems like the story of this movie is Nomi goes to Vegas and learns that every single person there is trying to exploit her, and he's just another. Like I land on the side that he's just trying to exploit every woman he comes across. I really have no sympathy for this character. It pushes this movie even a little bit further into a tragic tale.
Yeah, I agree. He is one of the few characters from this film who does return for the sequel. Because that movie does focus on Penny / Hope, the girl that he kind of corrals into his performance instead. But yeah, it's an odd plot that you could have. I don't want to say you could have cut it, because I don't want to, but like there reaches a point where like he exits the film almost entirely, and the only reason we see him again is to kind of wrap up that plot point.
Yeah.
And kind of finish that out. And it was very interesting to watch it back and kind of be like, oh, I wonder what's going to come of this. And the answer is nothing. Almost nothing comes of it. But apparently that's what the movie Showgirls 2 Pennies from Heaven might be about. So who knows? But otherwise,
I checked
it's very interesting character.
with friend of the show, my wife, Showgirl superfan. She has seen Showgirls 2. She does not recommend it.
All right.
So that one, she said, feels more like you're watching a Cinemax movie.
Yeah, and that's about what I expect. I think Penny / Hope, James Smith, and then oddly, like one of the lackeys that the Stardust are like one of the only characters I think that come back. So it follows the plot of like a supposed idea of Showgirls 2, which was kind of the idea of Nomi takes LA. So anyway, Some things are best left unknown, and uh, yeah, just didn't need to do that. But anyway, yeah, don't feel a lot of sympathy for this character either. Just kind of um, yeah, I don't really know what to think of him at the end of the day. But I kind of lean with you, where I feel like it was a little yeah, I got no sympathy for him.
There are two more actors I want to touch on while we're going through the cast. The first one being Robert Davi as Al Torres. He is the owner, the manager of the Cheetah Strip Club. He is a very sleazy person. Played by Robert Davi, a very well-known, well-respected character actor who, how should I say this? He has the perfect face for this role. Seeing this man manage a strip club, I'm like, yeah, I get it. That's perfect casting. Good job.
Yeah.
He says some pretty lewd things to the women, but it's clear that he has there's like a mutual respect. Like I don't, this is very strange to talk about. I don't feel like, boy, I guess it's not my place to say like what the owner of a strip club should be able to say to the women. I don't know, but I feel like they respect him, so I can't hold a grudge against him, if that makes sense. It seems like he, while he might say some lewd, crude things, he's not forcing the girls to do the things that he often talks about, if that makes sense.
I don't know. I'm not gonna
look. I like this character.
You get yourself canceled. Don't include me in this.
It's one of those sentences I started. I'm like, well, what am I trying to say here? I don't know. I like this character. I think he gets the sleazy tone of the movie. He's willing to lean into it. He reminds me a lot of the strip club manager from Planet Terror. It's a go, not cry. Reminds me a lot of him. And he has a genuinely sweet scene with the last actor I want to talk about here, where they visit Nomi after she gets her big break and says like, hey, congrats, kid. I'm glad that you are able to follow your dream. And it's nice. It's genuinely sweet. And I feel like he wouldn't, if he was an evil person that didn't care, he wouldn't have bothered to show up and give her that scene. So that's the reason I say I like this character. But he is a sleazy guy.
All right, I'm going to allow it. Alum of the show was in Predator 2.
Right?
Robert Davi. He plays a very similar character there. Just a character that you look at and you're like, yeah, I'm not going to trust you. Yeah, I'm not gonna wade in any deeper on this conversation. Yeah, I think he's the exact kind of guy that I would envision for this role. They got the right look and got the right attitude.
And lastly, I just want to talk about Lynn Tucci, who plays Henrietta. She is another one of the girls from the Cheetah Strip Club. She's sort of the almost like the MC over there that gets the crowd warmed up before the other strippers come out, and she has a sort of maternal role to the other girls. She is another one who gives like a heartfelt goodbye to Nomi when she leaves, and she goes to visit her at the Stardust to congratulate her. It's very sweet. Lynn Tucci, I looked at a modern picture of her. I'm like, wait a minute, I recognize her. I've seen her in something other than this. She's has a supporting role in Orange is the New Black. She's a regular cast member through most of that show, which is a show I watched. So I was like, oh, well, that's pretty neat. But she's very funny in this movie and provides some much needed humor at times. And like I said, the character is very sweet for revisiting Nomi later on. And I just wanted to give her a shout out.
Yeah, I think, this is one of those roles where you're kind of like, yeah, this is, there's an appreciation. There's, respect seems like the wrong word, but, the fact that they came back around and checked on her when she was seemingly at her peak. And also, I think it's important for Nomi to know that, hey, maybe not quite everybody is the worst, but these people here, they're all the worst.
All right, Andrew, let's talk about this film. Specifically, our favorite parts, the best scenes of the movie, starting with a high point, the best scene of the movie, or at least our personal favorite. So, in your opinion, when is this movie firing on all cylinders? What is your favorite scene of Showgirls?
It is when Nomi viciously assaults Andrew Carver in his hotel room.
That's pretty good. It's a good pick, Andrew.
It's one of the only moments in this movie that I feel any kind of catharsis. So I was kind of like, all right, no. This has been, well, at this point, we find out that Nomi is maybe not all that she has been presenting herself as. It is a kind of complicated path here. It's implied early on, like she's like, I don't know my social, but I'll get back to you. Things like that. There's kind of this kind of just deliberate kind of deception going on there, and then throughout the course of the movie, it comes up a couple more times, and it culminates in a scene where Kyle MacLachlan's character basically points out that, yeah, you're not who you say you are, and it is basically preventing her from getting any real justice for her friend, because to do that would expose who she really is out there. And she doesn't want to do that. So she takes it into her own hands and goes to Andrew Carver's room. I guess for context here, Andrew Carver is the person who, his entourage that viciously assaulted her friend Molly. And this is her way of getting revenge for that. So she goes into his room, gets him in a compromising position, pulls a knife on him, and then kicks him in the face several times.
Yes.
It's awesome. It is genuinely very, very cathartic. It is a movie that is lacking in consequences for any of the bad people, really. And this is one of the moments where you're like, yep, good. This dude deserves it. So he gets beat up real bad, and then she just walks on out. And it's not a long scene, but I was super happy while I was watching it.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good scene. It's one that I didn't see coming. Even rewatching it, I forget that it's here because I don't expect this isn't really a violent movie, and that I don't think of Nomi as like someone that's going to go kick someone's ass for justice. We don't see that side of her. But once her true past is revealed, and you realize what she's had to do, live on the streets, survive on her own, it kind of makes sense that she would have this inside of her. And it's my note just says it's death proof justice. It reminds me of the end of the movie Death Proof, when they very similarly get revenge by kicking a man in his face with their boots. It's very good.
There are a great many other sequences that I'm sure should be pointed out, but that was the one moment in the movie where I was like, finally, something bad is happening to one of these people.
And she paints her nipples red for this scene. It's very distinct, but we see Nomi's nipples a lot in this movie. But for this scene in particular, they're bright red, and they're targets. And I don't know. I've thought about it a lot, Andrew. I don't know what that means. I don't know why it's done.
It's not mentioned by him. He doesn't bring it up at all. I very much don't know what's going on there. So
it's almost like it's meant to hypnotize him, draw him into her breast so she can pull out a knife. But I think she would have got that point across anyway without painting them. But I don't know. I just felt the need to mention her change in nipples for this final scene. But Andrew, that's a great pick. And I just want to say another reason that the cops aren't being called is because this singer is sort of on the same team as Kyle MacLachlan puts it. He does shows in Vegas at these hotels, and they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to take down another top performer, and they're all protecting each other in that way, and that's why they don't want to take legal action. And they threaten to expose Nomi if she does. I said earlier that the scene that really encapsulates Kyle MacLachlan's character was, the scene after the boat show. But there's also one here where, he finds out that she used to be a prostitute. He asks her how much she charged. She said 50, sometimes 100. And he says, "You must have low self-esteem, 'cause you're a really good fuck." She spits in his face. Another cathartic scene.
Yep.
And he says, after she's walked away, without irony, "I was paying you a compliment." In his brain, he was saying something nice about her, which tells you everything you need to know about this guy again, and especially what he thinks of these women. Pretty despicable.
Cool.
So good pick, Andrew. For me, I mean, I kind of just want to say every Stardust performance, because those stage shows are genuinely great. Like, it's genuinely good choreography, professional dancers. Friend of the show, my wife, she was telling me all the dancers you see on stage, like people that would go on to be on Dancing with the Stars, or You Think You Can Dance. Like, there's legitimate choreography and stuff happening there and presentation. But the one I'm going to highlight is, and forgive me, I don't know the name of these songs, but the very first show, the first performance that Nomi sees Crystal in is the one with the volcano, where she comes out and it's her big reveal to the crowd. After she's pushed down the stairs, Nomi gets the lead role, and she gets to perform in that same performance as the lead. And that performance I'm going to highlight as my favorite, because Nomi coming out and being the center of attention and being the star, you can see it on her face and in her performance. Like, it's not just her performing the song, it's her like realizing that she is the shit. Like, she's done it. She's the star. She's feeling herself. And it's all seen like in her movement and her face. And she's just like on fire in that performance. So like revisiting that scene with now Nomi at the center, it's the completion of this arc of my favorite story being told here between these two characters, where she has supplanted Crystal, but at what cost? And at this point, Nomi performing, she doesn't know what the negatives are. She doesn't know what it's going to cost her. She is just reveling in her success and the fact that she's made it. That's when that story is really peaking for me. So I'm going to highlight that as my favorite scene of the movie.
No, I think this is a good pick. It's like you said, all these sequences where they are doing the performances, because this show seems really wild at the end of the day. Like, just very, very wild with everything that's going on. Like, all the different sequences, because there's the sequence of like this volcano. There's a sequence where they're in like biker leather outfits. There's a sequence where they're in these like white, like kind of white, like sheer dresses. So like there's all these different transitions and scenes. And I truly have no idea what this show is. And I realized that it really doesn't matter what the show is. It's just about seeing people naked. And it's, if that's what you want, the show's going to give it to you. But it is, these are great sequences. The scene where Nomi kind of assumes the role is a great one, because like that's it. She's the showgirl. That's the end of the movie. she is the last one standing. She has become the showgirl. And I like the context given to the end of this with the scene with Crystal, where Crystal kind of makes it clear. She's like, I know exactly what you did, and I did the exact same thing. It's this kind of this endless cycle where the person kind of almost picks their successor and watches that successor overcome them, and then the cycle will repeat. And they even were sort of suggesting it with the one dancer who kind of asked to be Nomi's understudy.
Oh, I love that scene. I think that character is Nikki. With the braids. I think so. I want to confirm that.
Yeah, let's confirm that. Let's make sure. Julie. I think it's Julie. So, I like the suggestion that Julie wants to set herself up as Nomi's new understudy. Given, one, that Nomi is aware that Julie is the one who took out Annie earlier in the show, the one who dropped the beads on the ground that led to her getting hurt. And, Annie was the original understudy for Crystal. And so that's kind of kicks off the whole second half of this film, which is ultimately, I think, why Julie is kind of leaning on Nomi, because Julie covered for Nomi the same way that Nomi could have exposed Julie, but didn't.
I love this scene so much, because it's like, it's Julie screws over Annie. Nomi sees it, but doesn't rat her out, doesn't speak up, lets her get away with it. And then whenever Nomi pushes Crystal, Julie says that she saw what happened and Nomi's innocent, so she sticks up for her. They cover each other, right? They both potentially have blackmail on each other, but they're looking out for each other, seemingly. So the scene where Julie walks up to Nomi and is like, "Hey, I would love to be your understudy." Nomi's in such an interesting position because, like, do you say yes? Do you fight for her to be understudy, knowing she's someone who is willing to injure someone to take their spot? Or do you say no and piss off the person that is willing to take someone out to take the spot? Like, it's just no right answer. And it's something that doesn't get resolved over the course of this film because the story's coming to an end shortly, but it just shows you like this cutthroat world that we're in.
Yeah. And so I like that a lot. I think that was again, just kind of building on that cycle, the endless cycle. That's the problem is Nomi, like you said, puts her in that position to be like, oh, if I make her my understudy, she's probably going to be looking to take me out to take my spot. But at the same time, she knows what I've done. But I also know what she's done. So, but here's the thing. Julie doesn't necessarily know that Nomi knows what she did. Because there's never a moment that, like, Nomi simply doesn't speak about what happened.
Yeah, the audience knows. Yeah, but she probably doesn't know. Yeah.
So it's very interesting, and it could have been it adds an interesting ripple to that relationship. But I like that sequence anyway. To bring this back to the original point, the sequence you're talking about, where she's kind of assumed that role, is like it's it. She's the Highlander at that point. So good stuff.
This movie has a fun sense. It has a fun. This movie's fun, Andrew.
This movie's just a blast.
Do you notice the topless woman in this movie? No, it's got a.
You seen this? You heard about this?
It's got a sense of humor. It's got a pretty wild sense of humor. Some stuff, again, I don't know. Like, there's the scene where they're having lunch and they talk about, like, you ever tried dog food before? It's like, yeah, I had puppy chow and it was actually good. She's like, I love puppy chow. It's like, what are we doing here? I'm sorry, what was that?
Is going on? Yeah,
But there's scenes like, I mentioned these names. Henrietta and how funny she is on stage. But scenes like the audition. There's a few audition scenes, her trying to join the show, her trying to become the understudy, where one of the most quoted lines of this movie is when they are doing the dance number, they're on the ground, they're on their back, they're lifting their hips into the air, and the instructor gets in her face and goes, thrust it, come on, thrust it. Like, you look at any Showgirls fandom, any showing or whatever, like, that's one of the most quoted lines, and it's one of those things that, like, they have to know this is funny. One of the lines that the writer pointed out when he was trying to defend the fact that this is supposed to be satire and humorous is the scene I mentioned earlier where the manager from the Cheetah and Henrietta come to visit Nomi. A scene that is genuinely emotional. It works. It's very sweet. Like, the stagehand comes and tells Nomi, like, your mom's here. She's like, my mom? She's like, well, for your sake, I hope it's not actually your mom. And it's Henrietta and the manager, and they're just very nicely saying, like, good job, kid. We thought you'd come back, but clearly you've made it. And that scene ends. Like, this genuinely emotional scene that works ends with the manager. He's walking off, and he turns back to say, must be weird not having anybody come on you. That's like the exclamation point on this sweet scene. So the writer points that out. He's like, look at this line that I wrote. Like, clear, like, go on. We knew what we were doing. And I think it's one of those things, to quote Forrest Gump, maybe it's both at the same time. Maybe there is plenty of an intentional satire and over the top, and some other scenes that snuck in that they did not intend. I think that's why this movie is so hard to parse out, because I think both things are true in a way.
Yeah, it's makes sense. I made a comment to you before we started that it feels like they shot the movie twice, once with everybody kind of in on the joke and once without, and then just kind of spliced it all together. And somebody said, I heard that said once about American Psycho, that they shot all of Willem Dafoe's scenes 3 times. Basically, one where he knows he's the killer, one where he doesn't know he's the killer, and one where he's not sure, and then mixed all of the sequences together in his responses, so it created this kind of inability to pin down how Willem Dafoe felt about Christian Bale's character. I have no idea if that's true. It's pretty cool. Like, it's a cool method to use. I don't think that's what happened here whatsoever. But sometimes it feels that way with just the way characters act. Is sometimes it feels like it's being played completely seriously, and then other times it feels like everybody's in on it. Like it's a hard thing to parse out where you can kind of feel like it. Like I said, it is all things at once somehow.
I love the sense of morality this movie has, and this might be where a lot of the satire comes in because like we don't know this from the beginning, but we eventually learn that Nomi was a prostitute out of necessity, out of a way to survive, not a desire to be a sex worker. Her real desire is to be a dancer. And she aspires to be a legitimate dancer, which for her is to be at the Stardust Showgirls, which a lot of people would look at that topless show and be like, this is sleaze, this is not art. But for her, that's the pinnacle, that's the peak. But she is doing the strip club like just to get by. She's fine with that. It's not because it's still in her mind a step above being a prostitute. She's not actually sleeping with these people. But Crystal, when she first meets Nomi and finds out she works at the Cheetah, clearly looks down on it. As far as to go to the Cheetah and force her to give Kyle MacLachlan a lap dance as a way to like demean her. Like, look, I could just throw money at you and make you do this. This is what separates me from you. So like there's this morality that this topless showgirls show is artistic, and a layer below that is a strip club, and a layer below that is prostituting yourself on the street. And like it's the fact that the peak of your morality and artful performance is a topless show. I think that might be the satire because it's
all nude shows at the end of the day. Like you're really trying to argue that you're classier because you're at the Stardust versus.
And I would argue, by the way, there's nothing wrong with any of this. Of sex work, do if you want to do it, by all means do it. But still, when you get like down into the nitty gritty of it and have these girls fight over again the morality of these perceived levels, I think that's where statements are trying to be made.
Happy, healthy, safe. That's my stance on pretty much all things. As long as everybody's happy, healthy, and safe, do your thing. And yeah, I think that's a fair assumption, I guess, because like there is this like almost hypocrisy of like being like, oh, the Cheetah, that's not really dancing now, is it? And it's like, well, I guess just because, like it's a genuine like strip club, well, this is the classy nude show. This is the one where you get naked and it's part of a bigger show and it's a whole big thing. But I don't know. I think if there is, it's that, but that feels so like, I guess, narrowly specific, but at the same time, it's as good a guess as any.
Andrew, the theme of our month is famous flops, and we started with Waterworld, which I thought, oh, well, this is working on so many levels. This is the peak of famous flops. It's water. But Andrew, I think it's been surpassed by Showgirls because there is some famous flopping in this movie.
There's a lot of water and perspiration and sweat in this movie, too.
This movie has a very famous sex scene in the pool where
it does.
Nomi, while straddling Kyle MacLachlan's character, flops up and down in the water like a fish. It is one of the most bizarre sex scenes I've ever seen in my life. And the first time I saw it, I'm like, what is happening?
What is going on?
On this most recent rewatch, I kind of connected, I guess, that she's giving him a lap dance. She gives him a lap dance at the club, wrapping her legs around his waist, and throwing herself back is one of the moves that she does. She's simply doing that again, but they're actually having sex. But the fact that they're in a pool means she's splashing up and down in the water. It's one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen on film, Andrew.
It is certainly very bizarre. Like, Kyle MacLachlan talked about shooting that sequence, and he was like, by the end of it, I was exhausted, and not really for the good reasons. Like, it was just I can't imagine, like, even in a pool, having to just hold up Elizabeth Berkley flopping up and down in the water endlessly for like take after take after take, where you'd just be like, all right, this is it, I guess. But that sequence is it is a heck of a thing. Woof. I got nothing else to say, Chris.
I just want to talk about one more famous funny line here that is something that is often quoted around my house. It's when, Nomi, she's got some money. She's moving her way up. She wants a fancy dress of her own. So she buys one, a designer dress. And when she gets a compliment on it, she goes, "Oh, thanks. I got it at Versace."
Versace.
And the manager of the show was like, "Oh, yeah, Versace. I know Versace. Everyone's around to, yeah, Versace. One, very funny joke. Two, yes. It plays an important plot point because Kyle MacLachlan's character, she says that again, thanks, it's a Versace. And he's the only one that stops and is like, it's Versace. It's pronounced Versace. He doesn't make fun of her. He, offers an olive branch. He helps her out in that moment. And in that, so far into the movie, you're like, oh, is this the one good guy that's going to, help her navigate these waters? And, of course, turns out to be an awful person. But, yeah, Versace. It's very funny.
I do want to shout out Alan Rachins, I don't know how you say his name, who plays the kind of lead director of the show, Tony Moss, who's kind of the thing. And his whole thing is that he's a prick, and he earned being a prick. And, he doesn't want anybody messing up his show because it's going to show him that he's lost his edge. So he's, super, super deliberate and specific and meticulous in how his shows are done. And in scenes like that, the way he plays that, I think it just definitely shows you what kind of character is Versace, and you could just see him being like, "Oh dear God, yeah, Versace, why not?" You can see every bit of it on his face of just being like, "Oh dear God, whatever, fine, who cares?"
I love he's so cutthroat at the auditions. He just has the girls line up, walks up and down. One girl's boobs are too big, like watermelons. He's like, "Get out of here."
One girl, a melon patch. Oh.
He's like, "Oh, you've auditioned before?" He's like, "Yes, sir. You said I need to get my nose fixed." "Oh, it looks good. Go fix your teeth. Get out of here." And
the ears. It was the ears.
Oh,
ears. Fix the ears. The ears were too wide.
But he's got a great line. He goes, "I don't actually care about any of you. I don't care whether you live or die. I want to see you dance and I want to see you smile." And it's one of those things where yes, this is an awful person. Yes, these are terrible things to say to a person. But in the context of this movie, it's a really fun character, and I like this guy.
Yeah, he's just a kind of a classic character actor. I remember him from an episode of Happy Endings. He played one of the character's parents. He was also the Clock King on Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, that's one of my favorite villains in the show. That's awesome.
He was the 2 appearances there, and then 1 in Justice League Unlimited. He did all those. He was on LA Law for a good number of years. That was probably his biggest claim to fame. Actually ended just the year before this came out. So leave a hugely successful television show and then do Showgirls. He went back to television after that. But yeah, just he's perfect for that role. He does the exact same stuff that he needs to. And it was just made for, like you said, what he's saying is objectively awful, but the character is kind of fun within the context of the film. I do want to shout out his assistant too. God, what was his name?
That guy?
Yeah, what was that character? I've seen that guy before too, and I'm trying to remember what his name was. God, this makes for great podcasting.
I'm gonna Google Thrust It Showgirls.
Dewey Weber was the driver. Patrick Bristow, it looks like. Marty Jacobson. I thought it was this Dewey Weber, but no, he's the truck driver.
Okay.
But Patrick Bristow, he plays his assistant. He's another guy that's been a character actor. You've seen him in all sorts of things. I'm trying to think about the thing that I know I've seen him in before, but I don't know. It's not coming to me. But he's been on Friends. He was in the first Austin Powers. Maybe that was it. He's in the first Austin Powers as the tour guide. That might be it. But yeah, just he's perfect as the assistant. He usually plays comedic relief types, and I guess he's kind of a comedic relief here, but also being needlessly serious about thrust it.
I love it. I don't know, man. This movie is a lot of fun. Is it good? I don't know. I enjoy it. It's a blast.
Then it's good, Chris.
Then it's good. You're right, Andrew. I have yet to see it on the big screen. I would love to go to some kind of movie party. It's that kind of film. That's the level I enjoy it on. I can sort of understand that initial reception, but in a weird way, it's kind of in line with Paul Verhoeven. Like, I think RoboCop is almost an anomaly because the RoboCop character becomes so iconic. That movie is an instant hit, and becomes what it does. But even like you look at RoboCop sequels, they become much more toned down, watered down, accessible for kids. Everyone forgets, myself included, how freaking violent that first RoboCop movie is.
Dude,
like, it is brutal.
Here's a RoboCop story. So for my birthday every year, I would always do like a sleepover with my friends, and we would just be at my parents' house, whether it was when they had a pool or just whatever. And they'd always let me rent some movies for my birthday. That was always the thing. Like, my friends would come over, we'd do cake, presents, the typical middle class. We didn't go to Discovery Zone or Exilorama or anything like that, for all you Houston peeps that understand those references.
DZ.
But remember one year we got RoboCop. My parents were like, yeah, these guys are old enough to watch RoboCop. Or my dad, I think, was the one who was like, yeah, they're old enough to watch RoboCop. And I remember the scene where Murphy dies. And I was just like, even as a child watching it, I was like, oh no.
It's like that clip
God.
from The Simpsons. Like, stop it. He's already
dead. Like, I'm watching that scene and I'm like, oh, they're clearly done murdering this man. No, we're not done murdering this man. We are going to keep murdering this man. I believe we're right. No, we're not. We are going to, okay, I guess this is how he becomes the RoboCop. Excellent. Yeah, even as a kid, I was just like, oh man. Like, I was like, this is a little much there, guys. Don't you think?
My point being, that movie is kind of an anomaly for being such a high satire, but still working. And I think part of it is people they somehow missed the satire, and it becomes like a popular hit movie. But
Sure.
A movie like Starship Troopers flops at the box office, but has this big life on home video. Like, it takes a minute for people to click. I don't know what it is, honestly. I don't know what it is, but something about Paul Verhoeven's films, because they are so maybe stylized, that I hate to use this term, but like, people don't get it at first, and then they have some time to digest it, and like, oh, he was doing that on purpose. Like, oh, this isn't supposed to be cool. It's corny for a reason. Like, he's making a statement, but that just doesn't seem to happen initially with his films. They're slow burns in that way.
It is. It's interesting that he just, like, I mentioned earlier just how sometimes it flies right past people, but it is, yeah. I got nothing else to add.
Okay, we'll end it there then. Andrew, we've covered some horny movies on this podcast before, but I think we've peaked with an NC-17 film, Showgirls. What a thing. While we're still in this,
like, can you say the movie is horny if everyone's just legitimately naked the whole time? Like, at that point, I feel like it's more than just a horny movie. At that point, it's just a sex movie. Like,
is a sex movie not inherently a horny movie, Andrew?
I guess. I don't know. Whatever. These are for the scholars to debate.
While we're still here in an uncensored episode, is there anything you need to get out of your system or want to get recorded on?
Jesus fucking Christ, I can't believe we're doing this shit again. You can take that statement and apply it to whatever the hell you want, and you can probably be assured that I am thinking about the exact thing you're talking about.
Let's see. In the year 2024, you're making that statement? Right. Let's move on to question of the week. If you want to leave us a question for a future episode, you can do just that. Just hop into our Discord. There's a link in our show notes. If you haven't joined us already, please do. It's free to join. I'm not asking for your money. You can just come hang out with the community and talk about nerdy stuff, talk about movies, and, of course, leave us questions for future episodes. This week, our question comes from Oculus Neko, who says, how many songs do you think classify a movie as a musical? Asking opinion-wise, as I couldn't find a definitive answer online. And there's a second part here. I'll come back to the second part of their question, but let's tackle the first. How many songs do you think classify a movie as a musical, Andrew?
4.
Well, that's it. Let's wrap it up.
All right, folks. Thanks for joining us.
This is interesting because there's like, I'm thinking of like Disney animated movies that will have,
there's just long chunks of dialogue and then there's a song. Like there's 2 kinds of musicals, basically. There's one where the songs are part of the narrative, but there's still long sections of just straight dialogue. And then there are essentially musicals where the whole thing is just music. And so I think if you're going to call it a musical, there needs to be at least 4 full numbers that are incorporated within the narrative.
Okay. Interesting. You were very fast with that number, Andrew.
Well, I think if you only have one, like, I think of a movie that has, like, I can't really think of a movie that has, like, one musical number, but I would just be like, aha, yeah. Like, I would be like, it's almost a joke. Like, haha, we're doing our musical number within this other movie.
I mean, like, Team America, how many, is that a musical? I feel like that's got 2 or 3.
Are in it?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I haven't watched that in a long time.
Pearl Harbor Sucks and I Miss You. I'm So Lonely. America F Yeah.
Is America F Yeah performed like by the characters, or is it just played?
See, to me, that's a bigger key than the number. Like, to me, it's a musical.
Like, it's all got to be performed by the characters. Like, you can't just have an original song in a movie. That doesn't make it a musical.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Armageddon's a musical, and we would never agree to that.
But see, I think I wouldn't call. That's funny. I wouldn't call like biopics about musicians musicals. I don't think Walk the Line is a musical. There's more than 4 songs. They're played by the characters. But to me, a musical is, there's probably a technical word for this, but it's whenever a character performs a song and there's that suspension of disbelief where they start doing a dance number and the characters act like this is normal and it's not. So whatever you call that thing, that's what makes it a musical.
So for you, a musical cannot simply be someone performing a song. It has to be a song that is incorporated into the narrative of the film. That seems like I'm not making a distinction, but I am. Because, like,
but I mean,
Johnny Cash performing a song is him performing a song. Now, it's part of the movie, but, like, it's not like the world is not in disbelief because a man is performing a song.
Yeah.
But if everybody on the street suddenly starts singing and dancing to a song, that's more what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what makes it a musical.
I would agree with that, but I still think you need 4 of those for it to be a musical. I think if that happens once in a movie, it's not a musical.
Man, what would you... Okay, I mean, that's fair. I think that's fair, but also I would question if that's ever actually happened. I'm thinking comedies. Like, I was watching Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar the other day.
Fabulous movie.
Great movie. Unfortunately, I didn't finish it. I had to go, but I think there's like 2 songs that are performed by characters.
Yeah. There's the one where they get to the hotel that they're not staying at.
Yeah.
And then there's at least one the villain does, right?
Yeah, on the beach.
Oh,
yeah.
No, and then the song on the beach. Yeah. I don't know. Does Wikipedia classify Barb and Star as musical?
I don't know. But I mean, those are
that would be an interesting question because Barb and Star Wikipedia, not that that's by any means a barometer of anything, only classifies it as a comedy film. But I'm curious the music. Because there is a soundtrack to Barb and Star. And first off, folks, I'm going to take this chance again to tell you that Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar is a fantastic, fantastic movie. It is so wonderful. So there's the Palm Vista Hotel. There's Edgar's Prayer. That might be it. That might be the only 2. I think everything else is...
Well, this is interesting because it's fitting my definition where you have the diegetic song, but people don't recognize how ludicrous it is, whatever you call that. But it's not hitting your definition of 4 songs. But I kind of agree. Like, if I'm describing that
movie... Would you call Barb and Star as a musical?
I don't think I do. I don't think I do. It's just it has musical numbers. So there has to be a point.
And then that movie goes one further because you do have a guy playing Richard Cheese also playing songs, performing them in the movie.
Yes, but everyone recognizes that's the person that's supposed to be performing songs. It's like the Johnny Cash
So it's got my point is it's got everything. It's got all different facets of it. It's got Yeah, I'm very curious because like Barb and Stars, like I said, it's a wonderful movie, but I don't know that I would ever classify it as a musical. But it has two musical numbers that fit that definition of like the character like just starts simultaneously performing essentially. And in one case especially, it's a full on everybody in the hotel joins in. Also, Edgar's Lament is fantastic.
It's great.
But the whole movie is fantastic, folks. If you have not seen
Is
Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, please watch it. But
is Barbie a musical?
no, because the only of the songs that are performed in the way that you're describing, I believe, is I'm Just Ken. And maybe, well, no, because even Push is kind of like an ironic performance type thing. Like they're playing them.
Push.
But even then, that's still only two. That's still only two.
Yeah.
And I still don't think that's enough to call Barbie a musical.
Okay, so I think you kind of combine our definitions. I think we got a good one. We need four
I
musical
don't
numbers.
disagree. Yeah, so my premise is rested off of four things of what you are talking about.
Okay.
I would not say four live performances within a movie makes it a musical. But then again, like, would you say the Blues Brothers is a musical?
Well, there's more than four songs, right?
Well, there are, but they're just performances.
Oh,
they're not
right,
really
but
done in
but
such
like-
a way that like, but they're not like they're sort of
Oh,
incorporated
man.
into the narrative. But
I
like,
think-
they're also presented as just people singing in the spot.
There's no like cut to a new location, but the song is still
The
the same
closest
spot
I think
they were
you get
singing.
is like the closest I get I think is when you have like Aretha Franklin and they're like in their restaurant singing, but
Yeah,
it's still
that's the
presented
one that
as
was
them
coming to
singing
mind.
in the restaurant. Otherwise, it's a lot of live performances. They're in the music shop. They're
Oh,
kind of
man.
in these various spots. So it's I
Look,
think,
I'm going to stick to our definition and say four diegetic musical numbers that, and if someone has a definition for this thing, where you know what I'm talking about, right? Where like we got to break suspension of disbelief, where like everyone does a coordinated dance number, or people just don't recognize how weird it is that someone's singing about their emotions. Whatever you call that, you need four of those.
what about Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where he keeps trying to start a song with everybody singing?
No, I would not describe
How many,
it
how,
as a musical.
how many failed attempts make it a musical? I don't know. The Blues Brothers one has always been a very interesting question because I've heard it said before the Blues Brothers is a musical, but at the same time, it doesn't really. It's not. They're not performed really in a way that like. It's far more like Walk the Line than it is like Sound of Music or something. Like it's far more people performing music than it is the songs are like, you know, we're kind of just suspending disbelief. And don't get me wrong, you know, performing a song in the middle of a fried chicken restaurant is a little bit there, but we're still seeing it. You know, it's not like, yeah, it's Blues Brothers is probably, if there's anything that sits on the line and could probably tilt either way, it's probably Blues Brothers.
Interesting. I'll be honest. I saw a very similar discussion break out in a different Discord server. This was over in the Draft Punk server. Shout out to the Draft Punks. It was very similar, trying to define a musical. And one of the biggest challenges I saw to that was the musical episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I haven't seen, but it was described to me that a demon basically casts a spell on them that makes them act like they're in a musical. So they sing their emotions like they're in a musical, but like, in the world, it's actually happening. You know what I mean? There's no suspension of disbelief thing. Like there's an explanation for it. Really challenges the definition. But by and large, I think four musical numbers, I think that's a good place to settle this. I did mention there was a second part to Oculus and Echo's question, which would be, which movie would you love to see as a musical? Their answer is John Wick 2, complete with dance number, fight scenes, and Keanu Reeves solos. I don't know why they're selecting John Wick 2 out of all the John Wicks, but I think that's a pretty funny answer. The idea of, yeah.
John Wick 4 personally would be the one for me.
That one. I still haven't seen John Wick 4,
dude.
dude. Is it good?
Don't
do you
ask
have
me. I'm going to make people mad.
Oh, wait, do you not like John Wick overall? Or you just not like
No,
John Wick 4?
I like John Wick well enough. Oh God, you're going to make me do it. The whole
Don't
time
spoil it. I haven't
4,
seen it.
The whole time I was watching 4, I was just kind of like, all right, let's get on with it. Like, I really was like, just ready to move. Like, there's whole sequences where just, nothing's going to happen to him, which is not a problem. That's true for things. But like, there reaches a point where it comes to a point of excess. And I know for lots of people, they had no problem with the excess. They were like, They were like, this movie could have been 5 hours and I would have loved it. But for me, I was like, there's a sequence where he's going up some stairs. And this isn't really a spoiler, but he gets nearly to the top and then falls all the way back down to the bottom of these steps and then gets back up. And at that moment, I was like, oh, so we're supposed to laugh here? No, we're not. We're not laughing. Okay. I don't know what to think about this then. Like, there was moments like that where I was just...
Oh, classic Showgirl situation.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how to feel. So with 4, I definitely had a moment where I was like... 4, I think, was the step too far for me, personally. Okay. I've liked almost everything to that point, but I know that is a deeply minority opinion.
Well, see, to me, they've been getting better as they go. I think John Wick 1 is fine. It's solid. I didn't love it as much as most people, but I think as the movie has escalated, I think I've really dialed in, and I loved 3. Like, I thought they really... 4 is the one with Donnie Yen, right? And you've got... It
is.
Interesting. All right, I got to see 4.
Plays Zatoichi, so you do need to watch it.
Okay, I got to check it out.
You do. Same this 6.
God, I'm so behind. This question is hard for me because I personally am not a huge fan of musicals. I'm not someone that would like straight up doesn't watch them or avoids them, but I also don't seek them out. So the idea of switching a movie to a musical, I don't know, but I do appreciate like a genre movie, like a horror musical or a over-the-top action musical, as opposed to straight drama. I think it makes it more fun. Like, how do you have a gunfight in a musical or a serial killer? So
there's probably somebody's probably done an Evil Dead musical, but like something like Evil Dead 2 as a musical, I think.
I've seen that in community theater, actually. Evil Dead, it's a good one. Yeah, any slasher movie I think would be fun. Scream, the first Scream as a musical. I mean, with all that, sure. you're pretty much covering all the slasher bases. You can pay homages to every slasher out there the way that movie does, get real meta with it. So that'll be my easy pick right now, say Scream.
Cool. I'm not answering this question because if it were supposed to be a musical, it would be a musical.
Well, Andrew, what about, I mean, sometimes movies get turned into musicals to become very successful. I mean, let's see, Wedding Singer became a musical, is a Beetlejuice musical. Yep. It's hard for me to judge these because I haven't seen most of them, but sometimes, I mean, the Mean Girls musical, which then got turned into a movie, was very successful.
Yes.
Are you anti?
No, because those things got turned into musicals.
But it started with someone saying, "Hey, this should be a musical."
Yeah,
you don't want to be that guy.
They're far more qualified to make that decision than I am.
Okay, fine. All right, fine. What movie do you want to see as a musical? Let us know in that Discord. And how do you define a musical? Do you have a different number?
Let's make Clue a musical.
There you go. That's actually a great answer. I would love a different song for each different inning.
Yep.
A lot of fun could be had there. Great answer, Andrew. Hey, look at you. Yeah, let us know your thoughts. Hop into that Discord. Join us next week as we cap off Famous Flops Month with Last Action Hero. And until then, just remember that maybe not every movie is great,
but all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. You can follow him on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony, and thanks to Mitch for the music. Check him out on Twitter at I'm a Biggie Boy, and check our show notes for the SoundCloud link. Check out our store on TeePublic for some Best of the Rest merch. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. It's the only way that we grow. And follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you. All right.
Thrust it.
I hope the mic picked that up. Friend of the show, my wife's post-credits cameo. I haven't really researched this. I just heard it one time. I read it one time that once upon a time, you could add avocado or guacamole to your food at no cost. But there was an avocado shortage. So they started charging 50 cents or whatever to add it. And then now avocados, there's no shortage. It hadn't been for years, but it's just continue to add extra for guacamole because they can. And we were used to it.
I mean,
And
that's what
capitalism.
shrinkflation is. That's what the whole argument of shrinkflation is simply that they have they've just kept the prices this, or sometimes they'll do both. They'll raise the price and lower the contents, or they'll keep the price the same and lower the contents and insist that it's necessary because otherwise they're going to lose money while they also post record profit. That's the whole, we've talked about it before, but just like the infinite profit loop of just like your company constantly has to be increasing its profits and growing and growing and growing.
Yeah,
and it's
or
just
it's a
not
failure.
fucking sustainable. Like,
Yeah.
you just, it's like, cool, you guys had 20% profits last year. You've got 19% profits this year. Now you're a failure. And it's like, well, not really. That's still 20% profit. Like, it's still whatever. But, well, if we're lucky, the whole thing will blow up soon anyway.
And then, especially when you take like the Marxist view of profits or stolen wages, it's just even more criminal.
And like, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say I agree with that statement probably more than I disagree with it, but like, there is a point at which the profits, there's a point at which it gets gross, basically, where you're profiting and retaining so much that I don't know how you can pretend that what you're doing is equitable, and I don't know how you can pretend that, whatever. But anyway, if you want to see Elizabeth Berkley naked, folks, I've got the movie for you.
All right, let's count it up. 1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,